All right, Stolich and I am. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Is Pepper ready? Who's behind you right now?
Pepper is ready. She's lurking behind me at this moment in time.
And you're in a rocking chair, so really, sure, her
it's
whole
not
life.
totally comfortable. She's like leaning up against me with her. She's like a 75-pound dog, so she's putting her weight against me, trying to shift me out of the way because she doesn't like where I'm located.
Allison, Katie Bo-Lillis. So she likes that window, which is what she wants. Sometimes there's flies on it that she likes, and she likes to look around.
I'm being jostled.
I see that. This is going to end badly, and with wires involved. Katie Bo-Lillis, who's the Intelligence and National Security reporter for CNN, former The Hill, Defense One, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
She reports. Are you ready for this, Allison? She reports that among the assistance Russia requested of China was prepackaged non-perishable military food kits known as in the U.S. as meals ready to eat, or MREs, according to two familiar sources with the matter. She says, the request underscores the basic logistical challenges that military analysts and officials have stymied Russian progress in Ukraine and raises questions about the fundamental readiness of the Russian military. One of the sources suggested that food might be a request that China would be willing to meet because it stops short of lethal assistance that would be seen as deeply provocative by the West. And of course, because we're all jerks, this guy, Christian Vanderbroek, you know who that is?
Yes. Urban achiever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He works for the Bulwark.
He's been a big never Trump dude for a long time.
Okay. But here he went and we found the Reddit reviews of Chinese MREs. Some of the reviews are not good. The quality control is flat out dangerous. Another one says undercooked and dry. Another one says don't buy them unless you either really want to play Russian roulette with your GI tract or if you want to support an oppressive genocidal regime. So, I would say, Alice, that this is an amusing for us, a very good sign. If the Russians, Alice, have run out of food, that is no bueno for that army. Hungry armies don't tend to stick together too long.
True. And Russia has been having problems with stuff like this for a while, with just these simple logistical things like keeping food coming toward to the army, having the correct vehicles and
Thank you, Pepper. Thank you. Good time.
They have problems with this, with getting the stuff to the places that it needs to go. It's a problem for them. They're not good at it. And I think that we knew that. I think that the situation is more dire for the Russian troops than, people generally expected it to be going into this whole thing. However, that being said, I think that the Russians are really good at powering through small things like starving your troops to death and having a lot of deserters and having a lot of people get killed.
I mean, historically they've been good back in the dark times, but I mean these people in Russia now, a lot of these troops have modern conveniences, like creature comforts, not just food, but these are people who they weren't attacked,
Right.
And so I think it's a very good sign. I understand that Putin's willing and the Russians are willing to let the military.
Yeah, mostly Putin is willing to keep sending young Russian men to go die in Ukraine over nothing. However, I think you're right that there's more awareness now among people that there's other options besides just dying in a meat grinder for powerful people who don't care about you. And people don't like that. Ironically, I think that is more damaging to Putin and his war effort than the sanctions and the other stuff we're doing. You know what I mean? I think that McDonald's pulling out of the country is not as serious a problem for the Russian people as Putin keeps sending us to go die in a place with no food and not enough weapons where people just want to kill us and there's no reason for us to be there at all. There's I think that there's a lot of cynicism about it in Russia. I mean, I certainly new formerly Soviet immigrants in the United States growing up that like wouldn't go back to Russia because they'd be conscripted if they went back, and they didn't want to go there. And, they were raised like mostly in the United States because of things like that. At that time, it was more Georgia where they were afraid they were going to get sent, or Chechnya to die over territorial aspirations of the Russian government. But, people don't generally enjoy doing that. And nowadays, people, I think, are a little more cynical about it than maybe they were in the past. Although I think a lot of I don't know how much people really change, and people have certainly done this in the past,
Right. Okay. And here's a little bit of Jen Psaki answering some various questions today.
I'm trying to understand what you are trying, your end game in Ukraine. You are not going there. You are not sending troops there. There will be no flight zone over Ukraine. And will it be a fair assessment to say that you are pushing these guys to commit suicide, knowing that Russia has a superpower and eventually it will capture the main cities, Kyiv and Kharkiv and all the cities around there? What's the end game?
Well, the end game is really a question for President Putin. We have completely crushed his economy. We have provided military assistance, humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainians, enabling them to fight back for far longer than the Russian leadership anticipated. And again, he has to determine what the path forward looks like for him. Thanks, everyone.
That's a crappy answer because the end game is what is our desire for how this rolls out.
Well, right, because the problem is that, yes, the Ukrainian people have been able to fight back longer and harder and made this more difficult for Putin than it probably would have been otherwise. That being said, depending how this ends up, it could end up that it would have been better if Putin had rolled over the whole country in 3 days and it had been done.
Right.
I think that there is a possibility that wasn't the worst possible outcome here, right? And an extended, horrific war with war crimes going on, maybe on multiple sides, who knows, that lasts for months and months and ends who knows where, is not necessarily better than like Putin just taking the place over. So if we're going to extend the conflict, I mean, because she's essentially saying we've extended the conflict, we've made it longer. Right. There's more fighting than there would have been otherwise, right? So that better mean that you have an end game if you're talking about how great it is that you've extended the conflict. The end game needs to be Putin butts out of Ukraine.
Right. That's the answer to the question.
Right.
A long drawn out war means the destruction of every single city block, of every single city and town. It will mean undoubtedly many more brutal war crimes. And the destruction, you'd set back the country to 1931 or whatever.
Of course, and the more you draw this out, Putin's logistical problems are making this difficult with the Russian army not being prepared to really do this logistically. But, it doesn't mean they won't keep throwing people and guns at it. And they can do that for a long time.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting? First of all, it was good to see that I was listening to the commentary podcast today, and they essentially did what we did last night, which was, first of all, draw questions about, why nobody was covering or we didn't care that the Iranians had attacked the American consulate. So that's to one side, but they brought up a good point. Podhoretz brought up a good point. We can't we're scared to arm the Polish in a certain way, and we're afraid to give armaments here and there to this and that, whatever. Which tells you, it would have been nice back when we were saying that the Russians were going to go into Ukraine about a year ago. Would have been nice had we just flown a whole bunch of planes in then, but nobody did. But they do make a good point. Like, why do we allow Belarus to do everything it wants? How come we can't threaten Belarus the way the Russians can threaten us?
Right.
Why can't we put the screws to Belarus?
I mean, we can.
I think there's a lack of imagination in this. in this situation.
I mean, Belarus is basically a
client
Russian
state. That's how I like to say it. Right, but I understand that. But, I mean, wouldn't you try to sow discord in every corner of Putin's life? Why wouldn't you? Of course. You would. If you wanted to do anything at all, it depends.
But I think ultimately you're right about the logistical problems is going to hurt Putin more with being able to keep up the war than stuff that we do. Fundamentally, they're shooting themselves in the foot, forcing the Russian people into a war they may or may not really care about.
Well, yeah, but we can add to their logistical nightmare by pushing more Javelin missiles over there and just destroying armored units all over the place willy-nilly. I mean, in a sense, there's no way other than carpet bombing every inch of every square foot. When you've got 26-year-old moms of 2 with Javelin missiles in their house and other armaments, etc., that's a tough place to be an occupying army when everybody is the potential opposition, armed opposition. It's a tough thing. Back to Jen Psaki.
The president said back in February that the U.S. would respond forcefully if Americans were targeted in Ukraine. Brent Renaud was killed over the weekend. One of my colleagues was injured today. We're still waiting to hear if he's okay. So what is that response going to look like?
Let me guess. Is the response not going to be as forceful as promised?
I don't have the response. I just have the question. Maybe I do have the response. We'll see. I'll scroll down here. It's kind of a bleep-eating question because they're war correspondents covering the war. That said, they may have been targeted because they're press, and we've seen some of this, certainly. But
yeah,
regardless, here we go. Here's the response.
The president said back in February that the U.S. would respond forcefully if Americans were targeted in Ukraine. Brent Renaud was killed over the weekend. One of my colleagues was injured today. We're still waiting to hear if he's okay. So what is that response going to look like?
Well, let me first say, your colleague Benjamin Hall, I know there's not final reports yet, or we would wait for your news organization to confirm those, but our thoughts, the president's thoughts, our administration's thoughts are with him, his family, and all of you at Fox News as well. In terms of specific actions, I think you have seen the president lead the world in putting in place consequences, putting in place repercussions and steps in response to the actions of Russia, the brutal actions that have certainly impacted Ukrainian people and now have certainly impacted some Americans. But in terms of next steps or what the next consequence would be, I don't have anything to preview for you at this point in time.
But we've seen the president's been so far unwilling to draw a red line on the kinds of atrocities that we're going to watch from the sidelines. I mean, we've seen maternity wards being bombed, illegal weapons being used, pediatric hospitals being targeted. President Obama drew the red line for Syria at chemical weapons. So is there any thought process about what we're willing to watch happen before
Well, Jackie, I think it's important to reiterate as often as we can that what we're seeing is horrific, what we're seeing is barbaric, and the steps that the president has taken and led the world in taking have essentially led the Russian financial system to be on the brink of collapse. We have provided more military assistance to the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian government than any other country in the world, and more historic assistance than any other year to Ukraine in history. And we're doing that so that we can support them in this difficult moment. So I would say that at this moment in time, we have been hardly on the sidelines. We have been leading this effort around the world to respond to every step and every escalatory step that President Putin and the Russians are taking.
A couple things on this. One, I think it's rather cagey and bright of the administration in Psaki not to say a red line thing. Obviously, don't put yourself in that position politically. Don't do that. I don't know if we know that we have the resolve to
uphold a red line.
Uphold a red line. So you don't do that. You don't. It's also just politically not smart to do that. It's stupid.
Yeah, the red line thing got Obama in trouble, by the way.
Exactly. Two, I don't mind her being cagey here when. Not that I think that they have a clear plan. It's very difficult for a good administration. Because we're trying to kind of have a war, but not have a war, but kind of facilitate a war, but not facilitate a war.
Right, especially now that you're already in the position. Right. These things are much easier to prevent in advance than to deal with after the fact.
Right. So it's on now. But I do remember, hearing all the pressures in Afghanistan and then Iraq, with the media using the fact that the administration is trying to keep its cards close to its vest, meanwhile pacify the media with a modicum of truth. So I know that they're easy targets, and I empathize a little bit with this administration for having to do a delicate dance here.
Right, because they're kind of in a no-win situation.
Right, and the press knows that they've got them against the wall here. They know that it's an easy one. That said, I do think that if we're not doing it, we need to, because it's what we've decided to do. I think that we do need to make sure, and I think it's happening. I'm not sure. My hope is that things like the Polish planes this is almost a distraction, so the Russians will watch us go back and forth about Polish planes and planes and planes and planes, and meanwhile we're training Ukrainians on missile platforms, on Patriot missiles, on the Javelins, etc., and those are all going in. Hopefully that's happening, kind of a la, I guess, Afghanistan. Hopefully it's happening. That said, Putin did fire some missiles fairly close to Poland, 10 miles away. And
he's testing us, obviously.
Sure.
And I think that, kind of not paying too much attention if you hit some American journalists here and there is also testing us in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt about it.
And I think that, whether you make a red line comment or you don't make a red line comment, the lack of lack of response in general, really, to this stuff that's clearly boundary pushing, just like the lack of response to the Iran missile thing that's clearly boundary pushing, that it's sending a message that the administration isn't going to do anything about this stuff. The sanctions and stuff, she can say, well, we've already crushed the Russian economy. Okay, but that was before American journalists were killed. So that's obviously not sending a message because they did something to American journalists, right? So, and I mean, I don't know. Psaki, of course, because she's a professional, was, said the right things about the Fox News journalist who was injured. Mm-hmm. But, there's a lot of people on Twitter who were less kind about the Fox News journalist getting killed. Mm-hmm. They're also just as willing to side with Putin if it means siding against Republicans.
Oh, well, right. Well, and that's precisely because of folks like Psaki have been essentially calling Fox News collusionists.
Right. So if you look through, Oliver Darcy tweeted about this Fox News journalist, Benjamin Hall, who's injured and condition unknown as far as I think we know so far still. But and you go through the comments, it's dangerous to pal around with Russian troops on the front lines, says one person. Wow, Russia didn't bother to worry about who they were hurting. Maybe Fox might want to stop rooting for them. Didn't you tell them you're on the side of Putin? Says someone else. Oh, God. Couldn't he just have done his Russian propaganda reports from Moscow? They go on. Death cults happily celebrate their members dying. They have no capability to mourn. Was he doing an interview on how Democrats mix the blood of children with honey and serve to the death panels that will kill your grandmother? Says someone else. So this is, they just go on and on. Indiscriminate shooting of one of their own. You cut off the part where it says we're still pro-Putin. It's kind of, it's interesting because Democrats are quick to say that Republicans are dividing the country, but they're the first people to turn around and tell you that you're somehow also not human. You're not allowed to have a different opinion. And that's really just because Fox News has some hosts that cast some doubt on some of the stuff the administration said, called out some of the biolab stuff. Mm-hmm. Mitt Romney called Tulsi Gabbard treasonous.
We're going to play that in just a moment. We're going to get to that. And of course, at the same time, the biolab stuff has been absolutely proven true.
Right. I mean, she didn't say anything that wasn't said by administration officials.
We'll go to that now then. I was going to hit Psaki with another thing about gas, but let's go right to that now. Here is the place I go to, the Oracle of wisdom I go to every day for such issues is The View. So let's go to...
And look, but I think that's an incredibly relevant question. Yeah. And I think DOJ, in the same way that it is setting up a task force to investigate oligarchs, should look into people who are Russian propagandists and shilling for Putin. That's being, if you are a foreign asset to a dictator, it should be investigated. In fact, I remember when Tulsi Gabbard, and I even hate that we're discussing it because I think to myself, who is this woman? She's she's no longer in Congress. She's a failed presidential candidate. Yeah. She only practically exists on Twitter. And the fact that we're giving her oxygen is what makes her relevant, that we're talking about her on Hot Topics. But on the other hand,
Isn't Tulsi a woman of color? I don't understand. No.
I would say so.
Why is this happening? She's a good Democrat, too.
Out something that is repeating false Russian propaganda and that has been brought down.
They used to arrest people for doing stuff like this. If they thought you were colluding with a Russian agent, if they thought you were putting out information or taking information and handing over to Russia, they used to actually investigate stuff like this. And I guess now,
Wait, are Democrats in favor of like McCarthyism now?
Yeah, it's a callback to precisely. Yes, absolutely. We need a blacklist in Hollywood.
People who are too pro-Russian. I see.
There seems to be no bars, and people are not being told to hate Putin. Putin doesn't need a reason to be hated. It's pretty much clear.
He started a war.
He started an unnecessary war
this is kind
that
of
nobody wanted.
Isn't this contributing to the death?
Well, they were calling Tulsi Gabbard
a foreign asset?
Yes. Hillary called her that a few years ago. Anyway, but also Tulsi Gabbard took issue with these biomed labs that are there, which the American government has voiced concern about. The weapons could be, not the weapons,
right.
The whatever that's in there could be used, weaponized.
Right. Tory Newland said, we're worried that the Russians are going to take these biomedical research facilities, or however clever way she put it, to avoid saying the word biolabs, which is now toxic. But it's just incredible because, if for however you define it, there's some kind of research facilities there that we don't want the Russians to get a hold of. That much is clear from the administration itself. And for other people to voice concern about this, like, what is this? How could this happen? Why are there these research facilities that we're worried about the Russians getting? And why did we have them sitting right by Russia to start with? Like, what is any of this? Like, the fact that you're then branded a Russian agent who's colluding with a genocidal dictator is kind of incredible. I'm not sure actually what's more incredible. The fact that like anti-Putin dissidents who just happen to be Russian in the United States are getting blacklisted for just being Russian, even if they don't like Putin, or that people who simply like question our own administration are accused of somehow like being in favor of Putin. It's funny because I feel like you could say we talked about the biolab stuff, right?
Sure.
And I don't think I've said a positive thing about Putin on this show. If anything, I've been a lot more negative about Putin than some people. It's just incredible to me how, like, the free association on the left, it's like, how many degrees of separation do you have to have from Putin until you're one of the people that it's okay to put in camps, like Tulsi Gabbard, or one of the people that it's okay to, like, not be sorry if they actually get shot by Russians. Like, Russians can attack an American journalist, but if he wasn't sufficiently parroting the party line on biolabs, or if people that he simply worked at a TV station with were not sufficiently excited about what the administration was saying about biolabs, if you're not like fully on board with everything Jen Psaki says, then somehow like it's fine if the Russians kill you.
Sorry about that. But this is what I want to bring on to you as the extension of what you're saying is, Psaki, they had that Twitter thing the other day. TikTok thing the other day where the TikTokers got their own Zoom call, TikTok influencers from Psaki.
Yeah, just like they did for the vaccine.
Right. So Ellie Zoilig was TikToker. Actually, I listened to a bunch of it today, too. There was no great takeaways, but it was essentially the administration giving a course on their views, their bullet points, their data points, their own opinion on all of the issues of the day. And these TikTok influencers, because Miss President Nice, Miss President Red Hair, Miss Press Secretary Red Hair, and Kamala being a first, and Joe Biden being the president, and not Trump. Well, we just took everything down, and it was re-disseminated by. Did you see this young lady, Elisa, whatever? Anyway, this is her saying almost word for word what Psaki said.
Why is gas so expensive, and why is the United States inflation rate at a 4-time decade high? I had the opportunity to ask the White House why gas down the street is $7, and here's what they said. The obvious reason: we are getting out of a 2-year pandemic. When use goes up, price goes up. But the call was predominantly about Ukraine and Russia, so how does that relate? Russia is one of the top 3 producers of oil, and it is actually their #1 revenue source. Now, with Putin starting this horrific fight between Ukraine and Russia, nobody wants to work with him and do international trade. So with people being scared of war and limited resources, prices are bound to go up as well. For the people who can't pay $7 for a gallon of gas, there's an app called Gas Buddy that shows you the cheapest gas near you, as well as a link in my bio to donate to the misplaced refugees of Ukraine.
So, what do you think I think of Elia Zeigel?
You think she's attractive?
Yes.
I didn't even see the video of her, and I know
she absolutely
by the
is.
look
She
on
seems
your
like
face.
a girl who went to USC and who got good grades because she did just that.
Repeated back what the teacher told her to repeat back.
Exactly. And obviously I love her. But how is this, by the way, and I'm stealing this from Twitter, how is this not a paid in-kind contribution to the administration?
Of course.
They're
of course
bringing these influencers in, downloading the policies of the administration, talking points into their heads, and then sending them out.
Right. Right. And we pay for it in most cases. I mean, I think I was reading that in one of these COVID bills, there was like $75,000 a pop to TikTok influencers for like talking about how great the vaccine was and how people should get the vaccine. So all those like little TikTok songs about how hot Fauci is and how they're so excited to be vaccinated and stuff. You and I paid $75,000 to TikTok influencers each to do stuff like that because that's, considered public health spending if we pay idiotic Gen Zers with large TikTok followings to talk about how great the vaccine is, which is insane. Like, why does our money go to stuff like that? It's so crazy. And then they're going to tell us that that was like public health spending that was important COVID spending that they had to do. It's ridiculous. But yeah, one small tiny piece of good news is, did you see the Manchin stuff today?
No.
Manchin has thwarted yet another of the administration's goals. I mean, maybe not permanently. They could still get a Republican on board. But they had their nominee for the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And Manchin has said he's not voting for her now.
Ooh.
Because among other reasons, she's an activist who thinks that the Fed needs to use their power to get rid of fossil fuels.
Well, there you go.
So, and unfortunately for the Biden administration, Joe Manchin comes from a state where the production of certain fossil fuels happens to be a major part of the economy, and he is unwilling to accept that in the nominee. I mean, so they're still saying that potentially they could get a Republican on board. They're looking to see if they can, find somebody. But obviously the lefties on Twitter are all upset about this. No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, who's some kind of... Do you know what he is even?
No.
He has a podcast covering top stories and interviews with the biggest names in politics. He goes, just in, Joe Manchin says he will vote against one of President Biden's Federal Reserve nominees, Sarah Bloom Raskin, a qualified progressive with a strong track record of holding big banks accountable. He says his opposition is because of her support for clean energy. And then he goes on, gaining one more Senate seat in November makes Manchin irrelevant. Gaining 2 more makes Sinema irrelevant too. If you can, please donate to help the organizers who are registering voters, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to get people involved. But it is crazy that they somehow think that with the way the world is going right now and with Biden's popularity and all this stuff, that they're going to gain seats in November. Because I too want to make Joe Manchin irrelevant, but I want to make him irrelevant by electing 10 more Republicans in November, which I think is probably more likely than the alternative. I mean, this whole thing, their whole 50-50 quote majority that they have was always that was like the best they could ever have hoped for, that majority in the Senate, and they're making it worse right now. Do they think they're going to win a seat in Georgia this November?
I mean, hopefully they don't. It matters as long as Trump can't ruin it. So here's Max Blumenthal, Alice.
Mm-hmm.
This is the media. Remember they used to afflict the powerful and power of the afflicted. What do they do?
I know what you mean.
Yes, yeah, right. So you
afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted.
Exactly. Tell me this. He's the editor of the Gray Zone News. Yada yada yada. He's got 288,000 followers. He says, contrary to Tucker Carlson's treasonous claims, U.S. biological research
Is
labs...
he one of the people we're allowed to put in camps, by the way?
I don't know. What do you mean? Oh,
because he's treasonous and a foreign asset?
Of course he is.
Okay, just check.
So he says, contrary to Tucker Carlson's treasonous claims, U.S. biological research labs in the vibrant democracy of Ukraine...
Vibrant democracy.
Here we go. I'll start again. Contrary to Tucker Carlson's treasonous claims, U.S. biological research labs in the vibrant democracy of Ukraine have a completely legitimate purpose, just like Hunter Biden's job. We asked several current and former U.S. government officials, and that is what they told our news org.
Wait, did they also ask officials about Hunter Biden's job and how legit it was? Because I know very few crackheads on the boards of like foreign energy companies. Do you?
Alice.
How many?
They had it completely. Once again, you're not getting this. Contrary to Tucker Carlson's treasonous claims, U.S. biological research labs in the vibrant democracy of Ukraine have a completely. This is an editor writing this. It's complete. Have a completely legitimate purpose. We looked at all of the criteria that make something totally, completely legitimate, and they met all of them.
Wait, I have a question though. I thought there weren't any biolabs.
That's disinformation.
I thought no. Jackie told me it was disinformation that there were biolabs. She said biolabs as a concept had been debunked start to finish. They didn't exist.
Well, Max Blumenthal asked several current and former U.S. government officials, and that's what they told our news org. They asked some current and former government officials, and that's what they said. The government said everything's okay.
Well, so do biolabs not exist, or are they great and vibrant democratic institutions of the great vibrant democracy of Ukraine?
Saying there are United States owned and run biological weapon facilities, Alice, is Russian disinformation. Putin. That's it. That's what you're saying. That's the answer.
But I thought you just said that they were good.
Saying that Russian biological weapons facilities, Ukrainian biological weapons facilities in the Ukraine that are run by Americans that we're going to use to drop yellow cake on our enemies, that's not true. That's Russian disinformation.
So
ask me if there are biological research firms in Ukraine.
Are there biological research facilities in Ukraine?
No, there are not American-run and owned bioweapons facilities in Ukraine. You see? And to say that is Russian propaganda.
And, in fact, treasonous.
Correct.
And they used to lock people up for things like that. Why can't we have that again? Asks Joy Behar. Or Anna Navarro. I forgot who said what on that one. But yeah, I mean, like, the whole thing is a little odd. Do you not think so?
Yes, and yeah, I would think it's a little odd that we're denying that we have biolabs in Ukraine, and at the same time, we're affirming that we have biolabs in Ukraine, and we have to look out because the Russians could use them against us.
And having biolabs is actually good, too, and very important.
Right.
As a part of a vibrant democracy.
Yes, so now it makes me wonder, who of the liars is the lyingest liar? Really?
It's really bad. It's really bad. It honestly, makes me want to wash my hands of the whole thing because they're so terrible. And they're just, It's true. They're just lying start to finish. There's no consistency in the story. It's really kind of like bold in a way. Like they just, on the one hand, will absolutely tell you there's no such thing as biolabs. That's totally Russian disinformation. And then they'll turn around and tell you that biolabs are great, actually, and Ukraine has tons of them because they're a vibrant democracy, and that's awesome. So, it's a little, I mean, it's like many of the COVID things, honestly. It's like the stuff about, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which absolutely had nothing to do with the spread of COVID. And they absolutely were not doing any gain of function research, except for the gain of function research they were doing, which was really good gain of function research. And how dare you question it or possibly say that anybody in the administration lied about anything when they told you there was absolutely no gain of function research. I mean, it's the fact that it's so lazy and that they don't care to like clean up the sloppy web of half-truths and outright lies and spin on all of it. Really, it's impressive because a lot of the American people are totally willing to take that as...
Right. Did I play the Randy Sherman stuff from last night with Brett Baer?
I don't think so.
About the attack in Iran. Attack in Iraq by Iran?
Not when I was there anyway.
Okay, so maybe we didn't. Okay, but I'll play it now.
Unless you played it before Michael Yon.
Maybe I did. But I'm going to play it again because it goes right in with what we're talking about. So Brett Baer says, okay, so the Iranians just attacked an American facility in Iraq, and they've taken credit for it. What do you say?
Is there going to be a response?
This was a very concerning attack, as General Keane pointed out. Indeed, we do not believe that the consulate was actually the target of this missile attack.
They attacked the consulate with 12 missiles. Target or not, they said they wanted to shoot the consulate.
Right.
They said
Maybe
that...
we did talk about this.
Okay, I think we did. But still, it's like the gaslighting is incredible. It's incredible. So I just want to play this because I don't know if we played this just like this yesterday. But anyway, to me, it means so much.
This was an attack on Iraq's sovereignty, among other things, and of great concern to all of us. Obviously, we will be following this closely.
We have U.S. personnel there who work and live there, and as you mentioned, no casualties as of yet that we've heard of. But at the same time, the U.S. is closing in on this nuclear deal with Iran. Is that true? Is it close?
Well, I think it's close, and we would like all of the parties, including Russia, which has indicated it's got some concerns, to bring this to a close. We are very concerned about what Iran is doing, but imagine these Iranians with a nuclear weapon. We need to get that off the table so we can address their malign behavior in the Middle East.
So wait a second. Imagine the Iranians with a nuclear weapon. Well, imagine the Iranians shooting 12 missiles at our consulate. How about we imagine that? Isn't that something to imagine and address now?
Yeah, it seems like they're not people that you want to be making a deal with.
But why are we looking to the future and saying, imagine they get nukes, well, that's fine. But right now, they've shot a bunch of missiles at us. Can't we do something there? Can somebody in this administration pretend that they have cojones and fire a fucking missile at these freaking MFers? Can we do that?
No.
How about we imagine we put a missile into Tehran? Why don't we imagine that? I would like to see that imagined.
No,
I think
they
that would
don't
be a
have
great
that
idea.
type of imagination. No, they don't have that. Trump has that. Maybe other people do. Maybe Ron DeSantis or some other people. I would like to switch gears a bit.
Please.
Because we've been talking all this heavy stuff and foreign affairs, but also, I don't know if you were aware, but there was the Critics' Choice Award last night in LA or wherever they have the Critics'
T-voted,
Choice
Alice, as the
Award.
kids say.
I don't know. I assume you were watching.
Yes, I was watching.
Rapidly, but a hate crime occurred when director Jane Campion won an award for directing the movie The Power of the Dog. Have you seen the piece?
No. Was it, is it canine-centric? Have I seen the piece? Jesus. No. I was cutting myself, Alice, as I do as an alternative to watching any movie.
So the New Zealand filmmaker, when she was getting the award for this during Sunday's ceremony, she said it was an honor to be in a room with the Williams sisters, Serena and Venus Williams, who were there because there's this like movie about their dad or whatever that exists. And she said, and you know, Serena and Venus, you are such marvels. However, you do not play against the guys like I have to.
Ooh! Oh, that is fantastic.
So she has now since apologized.
Oh, come on. Why?
She's apologized and said in her apology, the fact is that the Williams sisters have actually squared off against men on the court and off. And they have both raised the bar and opened doors for what is possible for women in this world.
They won, I assume? Oh, they must have won.
The last thing I would ever want to do is minimize remarkable women. I love Serena and Venus. Their accomplishments are titanic and inspiring. Serena and Venus, I apologize and completely celebrate you.
You can't even have a positive, uplifting speech that's based on truth anymore in case it brings something sensitive. Okay, that's fine. And this is the only chance we have for wokeism, is that it eats itself.
So she's very sorry. She's very sorry. She says she said, I made a thoughtless comment equating what I do in the film world with all that Serena Williams and Venus Williams have achieved, she said in a statement provided to the LA
what
Times.
Bullshit? I mean, God, why? Why?
So
God, is it that important to hang out with these gross people? Is it that important?
Yes. That's all she cares. She can't believe she really loves Venus and Serena Williams, which is why she said that initially and thought she made a little lighthearted joke, and there was immediate backlash, and she had to be very sorry and cower and grovel and apologize for how she had demeaned their great accomplishments. Which I believe they're tennis players, are they not?
Yeah.
So that's great, but that's like they're athletes, right?
Yeah, but and they're also not the best in the world, so that's fine.
They're fine. They're tennis
They're
players.
best for girls. They're good. It's true, right?
I mean, Novak Djokovic could probably beat them. It's true.
Right.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Burn Barrel Pod. You can find us on Facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast, burnbarrelpodcast.com. You can write us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. I apologize. We do have some emails that I do want to get to. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow.
Let's do it tomorrow.
Some, mailbag emails.
Let's do it. Sorry.
So if you want to get yours in, write us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. And listen wherever you like to listen to podcasts.
C'est la vie.